What's up, YouTube? Robbie Vapes back again, and today it's Battery Safety 101, so stay tuned. That's right, YouTube. Today we are talking battery safety. This is going to be a very short mini-series I'm going to do on battery safety associated with vaping. In particular, today's episode is focused on lithium-ion batteries. What's a lithium-ion battery, you might ask? Well, if you have to ask, you might be too far gone. Lithium-ion battery is, of course, referring to the 18650s, the 26650s, the 18350s, the 18500s, the 18490s. The list goes on, and honestly, what we're going to do in this episode is just focus on the ones most commonly used by vapors, and I'm talking mostly about the 18650, but there will be some discussion on the 26650 and the 18350 as well. However, the basic principle for all of them remain the same. Let's get started with what 18650 or any of those numbers actually mean. Well, I have a battery here. This is an 18650 Sony VTC, and we can see here the 18 actually refers to the measurement from the top. So from one side of the top to the other side of the top, that's the measurement in millimeters. It's 18 millimeters across, and the 650, in particular the 65 in that, refers to the height, 65 millimeters in height. The 0 is actually not referring to a rounded point or anything like that. The 0 refers to the shape of the battery, in which case 0 equals cylindrical. There you go, 18650, that's what it looks like. A 26650 has the same kind of thing. 26 millimeters across, 65 millimeters in height, and the 0 stands for, again, cylindrical. Now that we've talked about the numbers, let's talk about the two different styles in a battery. The first is, of course, a flat top battery. These are both flat top batteries. I don't know if you can see that. I figure the 26650 one's probably the easiest one to see. Hopefully I can get it to focus there if I move my head out of the way. That's your flat top battery. A button top battery looks much different. A button top battery, I have one on the 18350, looks like this. It has basically a little button sticking out. That is an 18350 button top battery. Now that we know the difference between a button top and a flat top, let's move on and let's talk about the actual everyday uses. What are these batteries used in? We all know it's used in vaping, but where else are they found? 18650s are commonly found in several places, including flashlights. It's probably the most common and most relatable to us vapors, because in both cases the batteries are purchased individually and then used in the actual device, much like vaping. However, what you may not know is some other uses. They are also used in portable electronics such as phones, laptops, portable gaming devices, etc. The list goes on. On top of that, they're also used in power tools. In power tools, again, you have a battery pack typically consisting of 18650s. 18650s are the most commonly used battery worldwide for everything. In fact, their most mass-produced battery is an 18650, and you'll see why in a second. So they're used in power tools, they're used in phones and portable devices. Now, phones, of course, use a separate type of lithium-ion battery, but it's the same principle nonetheless. Now, not only are they used in portable devices and power tools, they're also used in electric cars. In fact, the Tesla, for example, uses 7,104 18650 batteries to power up the battery in its engine. That is crazy. It's no wonder these batteries are so widely used, because they're everywhere around us. We just don't realize it. Now that we know the name of them, the size of them, where they actually came from, their history a little bit, let's talk about the actual safety aspects of them. First of all, I'm going to go over some huge do-nots with these batteries. The number one thing you do not want to do with an 18650 battery is put it in your pocket loose, especially if you have any pieces of metal, whether it be keys, loose change, etc. It's not going to turn out well for you. Best case scenario, you burn the shit out of your leg or wherever it's being stored. Worst case scenario, boom, it explodes. We've all seen that video. I don't have to tell you guys what happened there, but hopefully you understand. Basically, what happened was two pieces of change made contact with the battery on either end. It created a circuit, and it overheated and exploded and vented. Now, in that case, it was a severe case. I can't tell you if it was an 18650. I can't tell you if it was a 26650. I don't think anyone really knows what battery it was for sure, but what we do know is batteries in your pocket by themselves, loose, are a huge danger. So what can I do to prevent that? It's simple. It's like a 50-cent case. These cases are amazing. They range anywhere from like 50 cents to a couple bucks each. They are a must-have if you're carrying around extra batteries, which these days a lot of us are. So if you need extra batteries, get these cases, invest in the cases, and then you can store it properly. Make sure the case is secure, make sure it's not being damaged in any way. If it does get damaged, replace it with another 50-cent case. That easy. There you go, guys. This is a lifesaver right here. Those cases, 50 cents could save your life, and at the same time, ironically, 50 cents with a loose battery can also cause serious injury. Now, I don't want to scare you guys too much. I know we're talking about battery safety, and it's a very important topic to me. But at the same time, I don't want to scare anyone or deter them from vaping, because the reason why is there are so many simple ways to solve these dangerous problems. Like this is a simple solution to a very dangerous problem. And it's all you have to do is just do this, and you're done. It's solved. All these problems that I'm going to mention can be solved in a very easy way. The second thing, auto firing. Auto firing could happen. Now, this isn't necessarily battery safety, this is more like device safety. If you have a device and you put it in your pocket, whether it be with loose change, whether it be by itself, it doesn't matter in this case. What you need to worry about the most is making sure that if you do have a device in your pocket, it's either locked securely and you trust it 100%. In fact, if you trust it 110%, that may not be enough. Recently, what I've been starting to do, especially with some of these DNA devices, I found they have issues with locking and unlocking. They unlock way too easily. It's supposed to be 5 clicks. I can unlock it in 2 clicks on occasion. All I have to do is hold it down long enough the first time, hit it again, and it will unlock. Now, what do I do to prevent that? Simple. Here's the device, here's a tank. Remove the tank when I put it in my pocket. That way, worst case I'm doing is draining my batteries from the screen being on. Worst case. So again, if you want to put something in your pocket, make sure it cannot make a complete circuit. That's basically the gist of it. Just make sure it can't make a complete circuit, and you'll be fine. Next thing we're going to talk about is a parallel versus series mod. Series mods are all the rage right now, and everybody wants one. But the big question is, can you tell me the difference between a parallel and a series? If you can't, you probably shouldn't have one in your possession. And again, it all comes down to battery safety and knowing what you need to know when it comes to these devices. So, what's a parallel mod and what's a series mod? Well, further to that, I'm not going to talk about just a mod in general. I'm actually going to talk about paralleling batteries and putting batteries in series, and what makes the difference and how those differences come into play. So, with a parallel mod, what you're doing is for every battery you have, and again, it can be 2 to 100 or 1,000 or whatever it might be, what you're doing is you're basically keeping the same voltage as every single battery. And I guess before we get into that, what I should mention is all batteries should be the same specs. They should all have the same amperage, they should all have the same milliamp hours, they should all have the same voltage. And what this does is it creates symmetry between the batteries basically. So what you're doing is for every battery you have, you add up all the milliamp hours and all the amperage together, and you basically increase both of them based on the number of batteries. For example, let's say I have 2 batteries in parallel, and we're going to go with a simple example, but let's say I have 2 batteries in parallel, both with the specs of a 20 amp battery with 2500 milliamp hours, and let's say the voltage is 4.2, which most of the batteries are. What you're basically having is you're going to have a 5000 milliamp hour device with 40 amps of output basically, and the voltage, even though you have 2 at 4.2, it still stays at 4.2. That's a parallel. Parallel, you're basically increasing the battery life, and in theory, you're actually increasing the resistance you can build down to. But again, why would you? Because to lower the resistance, you do need more voltage to, and again, I know this is the wrong term, but to power it. Now moving on to a series, what happens in a series? Well, basically the complete opposite happens. When you use that example of a 2 battery series mod, you have a 2500 milliamp hour, 20 amp, 4.2 volt battery, and you have 2 of those. Again, what you want to do is you want to get the same specs. How do you get the same specs? Honestly, the best way to do it, get the same brand, buy them at the same time, and marry them. What is marrying them? Basically means you're basically creating a marriage between those 2 batteries. They never cheat on each other. They never go anywhere else. They're basically together forever. That's how it works. And what happens is you're going to hopefully drain them at an equal level so that what happens, you don't end up having one that's drained more than the other and creating another issue. If you're using 2 different batteries in a series box mod, stop immediately. If you're using 2 different batteries in a parallel box mod, stop immediately. Those can also create major issues. So again, if you're going to get into series, if you're going to get into parallel, invest the money into using the same batteries. And ideally, you want to buy 2 brand new batteries, not 2 previously used batteries, unless of course they were previously married. But then again, I still recommend going out to getting 2 new batteries. Just my opinion though. I like getting new batteries and marrying them to not only themselves, but also to device, and keep the rotation in general going. But again, getting back to this series, what exactly is a series and what happens? We talked about what the example is for the batteries you have. You have a 20 amp, 2500 milliamp hour, and 4.2 volt battery. And what does that basically mean? Well, it means that you have the same amperage. Even though you have two of them, you still have the same 20 amp limit. The limit does not increase because you have two batteries in there. Same thing with milliamp hours. You have 2500 milliamp hours. So milliamp hours does not increase because you have two batteries. What does increase in a series box mod, and why they're all the rage, is because you basically double the voltage if you have two batteries. If you have three batteries, you triple the voltage. Four batteries, quadruple the voltage. So on and so forth. Basically what you're doing is you're increasing the voltage, and the milliamp hours and amperage stay the same. Now what does that mean? That means you cannot build as low as you want just because it's a series box mod. Or any series mod for that matter. It doesn't have to be a box or anything. But again, my point is, just because you have a series mod does not give you the right to build as low as you want, because your amperage is not going to be able to support it. It's not about building to the absolute minimum that thing can handle. It's about building to where you're comfortable with and where the batteries are going to last longer. If you're constantly getting the batteries at their absolute minimum they can be, or the minimum resistance you can build on, you're basically going to ruin the batteries a lot faster. And there is still a chance of overheating the batteries, and when a battery overheats, we already know what happens, it vents. So we've talked about battery safety. Let's talk about hybrid style mech mods. And yes, that includes your noisy cricket, that includes a limitless mod, that includes a simple mod, that includes so many other mechanical mods. And really where I need to start with this is what exactly is a hybrid? What is a hybrid mechanical mod versus, say, a traditional mech mod? Well, a hybrid mech mod basically means you have a direct contact from the device to the battery. Now I say device, but I should be saying RDA, because 99% of tanks on the market, yes, there are some very, very few exceptions, but for the most part, 99.999% of tanks on the market, including RTAs, should never be used on a hybrid style mech mod. Why shouldn't you use tanks on a hybrid style mech mod? It's simple. It increases your chances of shorting a battery. So the big question is, how do I know if it's safe to use on a hybrid style mech mod? Well, we have different styles of pins here. And for anyone who doesn't know, the pin itself is positive, and the threading or the metal around it is actually the negative component. If those two touch and meet contact with a battery, it is very devastating. The results are something you do not want to see. So, what do we do to combat that? We know what devices should and shouldn't be used on hybrid style mech mods. What devices are safe? Anything with an adjustable pin that for sure, and I mean for sure, is not going to end up receding into the actual device itself and causing the pin and the threading to become pretty much equal level and causing a short on a battery. So, what is a short? A short is basically just another term for short circuit. What's a short circuit? A short circuit is basically when the current travels along an unintended path or creates an abnormal connection. So, what does that mean? What are the symptoms? Well, the symptoms are quite simple. You have basically three levels of symptoms. The first is when a battery overheats. This is when it gets very, very hot. Yes, if your battery is getting very hot very quickly, chances are you're creating a short circuit somewhere or a short somewhere. And I think for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to use the term short going forward now that we know what it is and what it stands for. Again, going back to it, your battery's getting warm. If your battery's getting warm very quickly in your device, especially if you're using a hybrid style mech mod, your chances are you have a short somewhere along the path. Now, what can you do to fix it? Well, first of all, what I recommend is making sure you do not build near the devices you're using. In other words, if you're building on, or for a noisy cricket, for example, keep the noisy cricket put aside as far away from your build station as you can. Basically what you want to do is prevent any chance of those metal pieces of clippings or whatever off your leads or off your builds from getting caught in the actual device itself and then causing a connection with the battery and the piece of metal, and especially if the metal is long enough to hit the side of the wall as well, that can also create a short. Now again, symptoms like I said, a very hot battery is one of the symptoms. The second symptom is basically catching on fire, or in other words, it's venting. What's venting? Venting is basically when it releases a whole bunch of energy at once to avoid exploding. Exploding is the last step, but it's also the most dangerous. Batteries are basically built to be preventative of becoming bombs because batteries are they hold so much energy in them, they are pretty much the same as a bomb because of how much energy they store and how quickly they can release that energy. So, what you want to do, if your battery is venting, first of all, again, if you start seeing smoke or anything, get it as far away from you as possible because there is a chance it could explode. Secondly, if it's already in a device, what you really want to do is, if you have time, get it out of that device. That's going to lessen the chance of it exploding. Then once the battery vents, can you actually use it again? No, you cannot. Make sure once it vents, once it's done venting, you put it again in a safe place and you usually give it to a recycling plant or somewhere where they can actually get rid of it appropriately. Do not throw these in the garbage. You do not throw batteries in the garbage, guys. I can't stress that enough. Now, of course, the last step is exploding. Exploding is basically when venting fails. When it cannot vent properly and it cannot release enough energy to accumulate or accommodate that venting process, what's going to happen next is it's going to explode. That is the only other option it has. It cannot release enough energy through venting. Maybe it's obstructed, maybe it's in a mod or something, and that happens. All I'm going to say is, if your priority is getting a battery out of your mod, it shouldn't be. It should be getting the battery and the mod as far away from you as possible before something bad happens. Because again, these things are ticking time bombs if they're used inappropriately. I also want to add in the fact that if you are building on a hybrid style mech mod, or any style mech mod really for that matter, that doesn't have a regulating chip in it, what you want to do is make sure you don't build too low. We're seeing a lot of people build really low on these devices and the batteries just cannot handle it. If you want to know how much a battery can handle, use Ohm's Law. There's free apps, there's websites online where you can go to calculate it all. Use the amperage set on your battery, figure out what the lowest you can build is, and build higher than that. Do not build at the very minimum lowest. Build a little bit higher than what is recommended at. Going back to amperage, however, on a battery, always make sure you know what kind of battery it is, and always make sure you buy your batteries from a reputable source. If you're buying your batteries on eBay or even some Amazon batteries, make sure they are what they say they are. Do not be fooled. And of course, the biggest thing I can say is there is no such thing as a 40 amp 18650. Most good 18650s are between 20 and 25 amps. If it says 40, it's not 40. I would do all your calculations based on 20 amps if it reaches 40, because chances are it's a 20 amp re-wrap. And that's best case scenario. It might even be less than that. There are 10 amp 18650 batteries out there that are being re-wrapped. So just make sure you know what you're doing and make sure the person you are buying from is reputable. With that being said, I just want to make sure that people are understanding that amperage is very important, and that is not something that should be ignored on the packaging of a battery. You want to make sure you know what your amperage is, and that's probably the biggest thing you want to know, especially if you like building low or building on mech mods and things like that. Amperage is more important than the milliamp hours. Battery life is great when you're talking about a regulated device, but in an actual mech mod, what you really want to go for is the amperage, especially if you like chasing those clouds and building lower. Alright, so we've talked about the battery safety on lithium ions, we've talked a little bit about parallel and series, we've talked about hybrid mech mods, which I really didn't want to talk about, but I guess I had to. Let's move on to the last segment in this, and that is the life cycle of these batteries. Yes, these have a life cycle, so if you are using them, make sure you understand that you're going to have to get rid of them eventually and purchase new ones. Now, to get rid of them, I recommend going to a recycling plant that will take electronic devices and giving them away there. You do not want to dispose them in the garbage. In fact, it says on 99% of these batteries, do not put in garbage or do not dispose of in garbage cans or whatever. What you want to do is bring them into a recycling plant, and you really want to make sure that you recycle them the proper way. So what is the life cycle of a lithium-ion battery? Well, it's typically between 350 to 400 charges. Now, a lot of the batteries will tell you it's closer to 500, but in actuality, through my personal experience, I've been getting close to 350 charges through my batteries and nowhere near the 500 they've been suggesting. So just keep that in mind. You're looking at about 10 to 12 months for a battery if you're charging it every single day, once a day. If you're charging it multiple times a day, and if you're charging through a device, that can also deteriorate the battery faster. So keep that in mind. If you are going to go through these batteries, make sure that you know that these are not going to be forever. These aren't going to last forever. You're going to have wear and tear on them, and you're going to want to replace the wraps as well, which is something I haven't talked about yet, the battery wrap itself. Well, all it is there for decoration or to show a brand name, right? Wrong. It is not there to show a brand name or for decoration or any of that shit. It is there to protect you from doing serious damage with that battery. The wrap and the white thing around the top cap or around the top of the battery is very important. The white thing is actually an insulator, and it also helps to prevent shorting from happening just within a device itself. For example, metal contacts in a battery chamber or in a battery sled can cause shorting if the battery is not properly protected. These white things right over here, if you can see right around the top there, hopefully my light's not too bright, but you can see right on the top right there, that is the white thing. That is the insulator. You need that on there. Do not get rid of these if you're doing a rewrap on a battery. And of course, that's the other thing. When do I do a rewrap? Well, if your battery wraps are ever damaged or they look like they're falling apart or being chewed up, which happens a lot in a lot of these devices, the battery sleds are not perfect. But if you have that happening, you want to replace your battery right away. Do not wait. And in fact, a lot of the wraps that you can get at the store or online or wherever you may want to go to get them are actually super affordable. They're like 10 to 15 cents each. maybe a quarter. They are just super, super cheap, and it's well worth it. Again, talking back about safety, 50 cents, 50 cents, or whatever it might be. All these things can be changed with spending such little amounts of money to get them fixed. Why would you risk it? You're not spending a fortune to have to worry about protecting yourself from these batteries. What you're doing is you're actually safeguarding yourself from preventing stupid things from happening. So, I think that's going to do it for today's Battery Safety 101. I wanted to keep it a little bit short to make this a very simple and easy to follow video. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope some of you guys learned something. If you did, let me know in the comments. If you like it, let me know, and I'll be doing more of these. The next episode will be on LiPos or lithium polymer batteries, such as the one in this DNA right here. And again, my main concern is if I can help one person from doing something very stupid with batteries, I consider my mission accomplished. There is no need to go any further than that. So, that's going to end it here. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, YouTube, happy vaping.